The member for Kooyong.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. I rise to join my colleagues on both sides of the House in paying our respects on the 10th anniversary of the Bali bombings, which occurred on October 12, 2002. And I follow my colleague and friend, the member for Riverina, who gave us a very passionate and insightful speech into his reflections on those tragic events. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, the attacks on the Kuta nightclub district, on the Sari Club and the Paddy's pub, saw 202 innocent people lose their lives and more than 200 people injured. 88 Australians died and 38 Indonesians. And representatives and citizens from Britain, France, the United States, Holland, Japan, Sweden, Korea, and other countries also lost their lives. People of all different faiths lost their lives that day. The attack was indiscriminate, with the simple goal of wreaking as much havoc as possible. Terrorism does not distinguish between its victims. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, on the night of that attack, our Prime Minister at the time, John Winston Howard, called it an act of terrorism. He said it was a wickedly and cowardly act. And he was to say to a father of one of those young people missing, Mr Phil Burchett, "We'll get those bastards who did this." And thankfully, through the efforts of the Australian, Indonesian and international law enforcement agencies, we were successful in that aim. Amrozi, Mukhlas, Samudra were all punished with their execution. Hambali, an ally of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the architect of the September the 11 attacks, and the link between Jamaat Islamiyah and Al-Qaeda, was also punished. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was pulled out of his rat hole and taken into custody. Norden Top was killed, and the spiritual leader of Jamaat Islamiyah, Abu Bakr Bashir, a man with blood on his hands, was also to pay a price. It's important that we remember and pay credit to the men and women in the Australian Secret Intelligence Organisation led by Dennis Richardson, to the men and women in the Australian Federal Police led by Mick Kilty, and the men and women in ASIS, which does so much work to protect Australians. The Howard government, with support from the other side of the political divide, gave these organisations the necessary resources to do their work. And I had the honour of working in Mr Howard's office in 2003 and 2004, when still much of that work post-Bali, was being done. Another one of my bosses, Alexander Downer, Foreign Minister, Australia's longest-serving Foreign Minister, worked diligently with his Indonesian counterparts, as well as American counterparts. I remember Colin Powell was one, as Secretary of State, to ensure that everything was done to capture these terrorists. And it's important to understand that this was a bipartisan effort. Just as Simon Crean went with John Howard at the time of the attacks to Bali, so too did Tony Abbott go just weeks ago with Prime Minister Gillard for the commemoration, to Bali for the commemoration. But it's not just the people in politics and the law enforcement agencies who did so much. In fact, it was a lady like Fiona Wood, the Australian of the Year in 2005, a burn specialist, whose selfless and skillful work was able to save lives after this tragic event. The military medical teams who were sent with limited notice to Bali to work in warlike conditions. The Qantas staff who quickly dispatched planes to bring home the injured. To a good family friend of mine, Graham Southwick, a plastic surgeon who played such an important role because he found himself happened to be on holiday in Bali at the time. And all those people in the Darwin Hospital and in Perth who gave support and assistance to the wounded and the injured. And it's people like Peter Hughes, who was a survivor of the Bali attacks, who set up a foundation for burns victims, and Dr. David Marsh and his wife Claire, who was a nurse, who were there at the time, who've set up a foundation to ensure that medical equipment gets to Indonesian hospitals. Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, so much was done by so many people to save lives after the tragic events of October 12, 2002. And if I say there is one bright element to this terrible event, it's the deeper level of cooperation between Indonesia and Australia. And to that end, I would like to share some words of Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, the President of Indonesia. Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono was Security Minister at the time. And since 2004, he has been President of Indonesia. And he said, the Bali bombings created a set of critical chain reactions.
Order, it being 6:30, in accordance with Standing Order 192, the debate is interrupted. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made in order of the day for the next sitting. The member will have leave to continue speaking when the debate is resumed.